guys, welcome back to Magic TV. My name's Craig. It's 9 o'clock. It's time for a Talk Magic. And today I have an amazing magician that I can't wait to speak to. He is one of the faces of Penguin Magic, but he has done so much more through his career than that. And I want to talk about all of the stuff that he's done because this guy is super successful and really has chops. It is Erik Tait. How you doing, Erik?
Doing great, Craig. How are you?
I'm super excited. Thank you so much for taking time to. You do so much. I mean, you do. Every time I speak to you, like mega busy, and you're producing so much content. You video edit. You're a performer. You're a creator. I don't know how you have time to do everything that you do. So
it's a lack of sleep and a panic that I'll lose relevance. So.
Well, man, I'm a big fan. I've become, and we'll talk about this in a bit, but I've become an even bigger fan of you recently since I've found, and we talked about this off camera last week, but I've become an even bigger fan of you recently ever since I've kind of immersed myself in a lot of your material. I mean, you are an amazing performer. You really are. And I want to talk about all of that because if the people watching this have not yet checked out your Penguin Live, for example, they really should because it's one of the best Penguin Lives I've seen. It's brilliant.
Oh, thanks. That's a high praise. I was not expecting that. It's I'm just glad that people liked it. It was weird because I sort of got shoved in the magic community's face like bam 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 because I won the IBM and then my Penguin Live came out like literally that weekend and then I think it was like 3 weeks later I was on Fool Us and so everyone was just like, who the hell is this guy? And I'm just glad that people seem to like what I do. So I'm very appreciative.
100%. Now let's start at the very beginning for people that haven't heard about Erik Tait, and let's very quickly cover your origin story and how you kind of got into magic. Was it your typical story of you got bought a magic set when you were knee high to a grasshopper and then went from there? When did you get into magic?
Sort of. My first trick was arguably cups and balls. My father was in sales when I was a kid, so moved around a lot, went on a lot of trips. And I remember being in Atlanta, and he took me to a magic shop, and it had like dark paneling and like backlit glass, and and then they sell you like a nice set of cups and balls or Svengali. Like it's a pitch shop. I can't remember. I feel like I heard David Williamson like worked in this chain at some point. It wasn't Williamson who sold this to me, but it was a chain that he worked in at some point. And my dad bought me a set of cups and balls, an aluminum set, and I'd done that for a long time. My granddad knew a card trick that he taught me, but I didn't really seriously do a lot of magic until I was 18, 19. Because when I was in middle school, I got seriously involved in juggling. I was competed in juggling contests, had an act, did a lot of like festivals and corporate events as like a young juggler, did a lot of like fairs, things like that. I mean, I had a juggling act. I was going to be a juggler. And I started working. I got a gig working at a place called the Comedy Barn Theater in Pigeon Forge, Tennessee. I think they're still open, but it was sort of it was like if Hee Haw had a variety show. So like all of the performers were in overalls and bright red shirts. And I got hired to juggle in the show. And all of the cast members would work the souvenir booths because you were much more likely to buy a $30 t-shirt from someone you just saw on stage than you were some spotty teenager. And so I remember when I got hired, I was like 18 or something like that. And the owner of the place is a guy named Jim Hedrick. And he went, on my first day, he was like, "You're a juggler. You probably know magic. Why don't you go work in our magic shop?" And I like knew very, very little. So like I knew cups and balls. I had a Svengali deck at some point. Ended up behind the counter with a ventriloquist who also studied magic by the name of Stephen Knowles. He used to own a company called Rubber Chicken Depot long time ago. And he taught me the pitch for cups and balls, the hot rod, mental photography, Svengali deck, invisible deck, Professor's Nightmare. And like that was the first 20 minutes that I'd met him. And then I was pitching all of that stuff almost immediately. So I sort of like became a professional magician, like a professional pitch shop magician at the moment that I like became a magician. Sort of backstage, I had a lot of time to work on stuff. And I sort of gravitated towards card magic pretty quickly. And this is probably extremely unethical, but I used to use a regular deck to attract a crowd and develop a bunch of like card magic, and then I would like switch into pitch mode and switch in a Svengali deck and start doing that. And so people had just watched me do a bunch of like what is now standard material for me. And then I would just switch over to a Svengali deck and be like, and you too can do all of these tricks if you buy this $15 deck of cards. Yeah, but that was kind of like where it started.
Well, you know, I've always said that the people that have a background in pitching magic and being a pitchman, they are such good performers, because you have to be good to get somebody to want to buy it. I know I spent years working on a market stall pitching, and it just makes you such a slick performer because you do these routines so many times.
It really is. Like, I know you interviewed Nick Capo recently, and if you want to see one of like the best Svengali workers in the world, it's Nick, because Nick pitched Svengali deck like with like a professionally cut Svengali deck at Universal Studios for years. And so he just has like, you know, you get bored doing stuff, so you end up with access to like moves that other people wouldn't think of. That's why all the people who do whirling card the best, all of them are like people who worked at Houdini's or any other place. And so yeah, I mean, it's been a while since I've picked up a mental photography deck, but I could probably still rock a mental photography routine if I had to. It's yeah, but my current cups and balls work is like definitely rooted in some pitch shop stuff, you know, doing different loads and different sequences that are not like the typical Vernon routine, just because I was doing it all the time. I learned to improvise a lot with cups and balls during that time, but you had like a few minutes to gather a crowd, sell them as much stuff as you can, and then, you know, gather the next one before the show started. So we moved a lot of decks of cards.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you're working at this place, you're hired as a juggler, but you're pitching magic. How did you then go from being a juggler to being a magician? Is it something, I mean, do you still juggle now, or is it something that kind of fell away and what happened there?
I still juggle now. I still have the skills. I mean, I was a high level juggler for almost a decade. I say high level, you know, I'm not like as skilled as a lot of the people in like Cirque and places like that, but I could hold my own. And I think what happened was at around the same time, from high school on, I had been very involved in comedy. My high school had an improv team that I became a part of, doing sort of like the theater sports style, the like you would see on Whose Line Is It Anyway? We did a lot of that. And then at the time, I was getting very interested in stand-up comedy. It's we didn't get like cable until I was like a junior in high school. And so, you know, getting access to Comedy Central, our comedy channel in high school, and then seeing, you know, like at the time, David Tell was just getting big, Lewis Black was just getting big, Patton Oswalt was just getting big, and then seeing those people like really made me like I wanted to do that. And so, and already being a juggler and sort of a comedy juggler, I was already sort of moving away from juggling into wanting to do stand up, and I still do stand up. And what happened was I was, you know, I'd been at the Comedy Barn for 3 years. I was also in school at the University of Tennessee, and I found out about this program at Humber College where I could get a degree in comedy. And I sort of applied on a whim, and I got in. And so I moved to Canada and ended up, I was getting a degree in ecology and evolutionary biology with a minor in philosophy. And I totally dropped all of that to go get a degree in comedy. So my actual degree from a college is in comedy writing and performance.
That's so cool.
Yeah. And so at that time, I was moving away from juggling, and I still liked magic. But I got a job. I went to school in Toronto, and as an American, the only place I was allowed to work was on campus, and the options were food service or the front desk of the residence. And the only position available in the residence was midnight shift. And they were like, as long as you don't fall asleep, you can do whatever you want. So I would practice card moves on a hard surface. The reason my Zero shuffle looks the way it does these days is because I learned to Zero shuffle on just like a hardwood surface, because I was allowed to bring cards, but I wasn't allowed to bring a close-up mat. It was weird. So it was just something that I would do and I loved and messed around with. And so I'm just doing comedy at night, studying comedy during the day. And then when I was working, I'm like working on card stuff. And it's just, so juggling just sort of naturally fell away because there was just a lot. Magic was a stronger pull for me. It was easier to form an act around. Juggling also has a bit of a shelf life. Jugglers tend to be a little bit like football players, at least in my experience, where, you know, your body can only do that for so long. Because you're like, you know, you're doing, I mean, I know a lot of people who were jugglers for a long time who've needed like rotator cuff surgery because there's a lot of like repetitive motions. Um, and so there, and magic just seemed like a longer career path anyway. Like that, like my mentor who started out as a juggler, he does a dog act now. He and his wife don't juggle in their act anymore. It's all trained dogs now. So, and I know I've heard a lot of stories about that. So it just, part of it was I liked card magic more. I got very heavily involved in studying Leonard Green stuff. And it just seemed smart business wise, because it was like I was deep enough in entertainment that I was like, I'm never gonna have like a real job. I'm never gonna like become a CEO or an accountant or something like that. And so just magic seemed like a better option, I think, is sort of how that worked.
That's very interesting. Now, I've got a few things to talk to you about that. And the first one I want to pick up on is the stand-up comedy. A lot of magicians like to think of themselves as comedians when in reality they're comedy magicians. And there's a big difference between a comedy magician and walking into a like a comedy club without props, without anything, cold in front of an audience and making people laugh and making them want to listen to you for a 10, 15, 20-minute set, however long it is. And a lot of magicians are scared to death of the thought of going out on stage and doing stand-up comedy. As somebody who's spent a lot of time doing stand-up comedy and still does stand-up comedy to this day, have you got any advice on magicians that want to jump into that comedy club circuit, or even, maybe make their act more humorous? Is there some sort of advice that you can give there? Because you've rocked the comedy club circuit. I've heard from so many people how funny you
are. I think so. The last convention I worked was Mark DeSouza's convention, and he was like, "You can come, but only if you agree to do stand-up comedy during the gala show." I was like, "Okay." I just got booked for another convention under the same rules, which is interesting and making me question if they even want my magic at all. But I think that the English and the British systems are different, just because the British system is much smaller. So like there is an established circuit, whereas the American system is not, and the Canadian system to a similar extent. And depending on where you are, the approach is going to be different because the cultures are very different anywhere. But I think that the same rule applies in that no matter where you are, is that you need to find an open mic, and you need to go to the open mic, and you need to write 5 minutes of jokes, right? And like not like street jokes, not like knock knock who's there, or the jokes that you found on Reddit. Like you need to like sit down and make a concerted effort, because if you first, you need to go and watch the room for like 3 weeks and not try and get on stage. I think that's a mistake that a lot of magicians make, is they go, "Oh, I'm a performer, I can go do this." And a comedy room is a very different environment to a magic show. And so you need to go and see what people are doing in that room, because what's going on the open mic level is very different from what's going on in the club level. You've got a lot of people taking risks, experimenting, doing weird stuff. You've got bad comedians, good comedians who are purposely doing something badly, because the open mics are the Wild West. And you need to find an open mic that is not through a comedy club. You need to find like somebody who is like four-walling the back room of a bar, throwing a microphone and a PA in there, and inviting their friends to go do a show. You need to watch it for 3 weeks and then write down 5 minutes. You might not even need 5 minutes, because the rules of the different rooms will vary. Some rooms, a lot of rooms only have 3 minutes per performer, because they'll put like 25, 30 comics up in a night, and you can't give everyone 10 minutes. But you need to write as tight a 3 minutes as you can, and then you need to go perform it. And you need to go perform it without a single magic trick on your body or in your car. Because I think I've seen too many times, I've seen magicians come to an open mic and go, I want to try stand-up comedy, and they come to a room that they know I'm going to be at because they want sort of moral support, and they go up and I watch them do their first joke or two, and the joke bombs, and then they panic and they pull a magic trick out, and because they want to have a good time. And the point is not to have a good time, the point is to learn. And magic is too easily a crutch when you're trying to learn something like that. I've definitely experienced that. I definitely have gone up on stage, my jokes aren't working, and I've just been like, all right, let's do a card trick, and like saved myself with that. It's, and but it was that experience of doing it over and over again to not have that safety net that's the only way you can learn.
Yeah.
And I think if you want to do magic in an open mic, or in a comedy format, it's fine, but you need to talk to the person who runs the room first, because magic is inherently interactive and comedy is not. You may see instances where you think it is interactive, but that is actually a highly choreographed monologue in which the audience is going to, it's almost like a mentalism trick in that the audience is expected to react a certain way because you're asking for a certain question, looking for a specific type of feedback in order to proceed on to your next line so that you can get that laugh. Or a lot of comedians, and I learned this from a really great comedian named Larry Horowitz, they use invisible people. So you'll ask something to the room, you'd be like, hey, anyone here know that thing, like when your neighbor's dog won't start barking, and and I'm just like making this up. Yeah, you do. Exactly. You know what I'm talking about? There's no one there. I've just acknowledged an invisible person, right? And so it seems like it's interactive, but it's 100% not. And the problem with magic in a comedy environment is that if you go in and you do a magic trick, which is not in one, it's not something you're doing by yourself and just doing this piece of things to look at, because most of the magic that people know, we're always so focused on getting people, interacted in this, that there's very few magic that is done in one. So you end up changing the audience into interactive mode. And if you don't know how to reset that audience to go back to its monologue time, everyone needs to sit down and shut up and not talk to whoever the performers are. You will ruin that room for the rest of the night, and the rest of the comics will hate you. There was a comedian in Cincinnati who was going to open mics and doing magic at open mics over and over again, and he didn't have that consciousness of resetting the room. And it got so bad that magic was banned in all of the rooms in Cincinnati for quite some time, and I could not go down there and work as a comedian because they were like, well, you're known as a magician, we can't have you in. The comics just won't perform if they know there's a magician in there or on the lineup. And it's since, thankfully, memories are not as long as we think, and it's changed, and you can go down there when there's not a global pandemic on. But like you can ruin a room if you go in and you are not like there to play by their rules. And so that's just, I guess that's a long diatribe, but go do it. Like, I mean, I think every performer should go do stand up and have that experience of miserably failing. And you need to do it a couple times, because everyone is amazing their first time because you've got this nervous energy and the audience like wants you to succeed. And then your second time is awful, and the third time will decide whether or not you do it for the rest of your life, because you'll decide to never do it again, or you're like, man, this is the most addictive drug ever, and I don't have to have like 20 pounds of shit with me. Sorry, 20 pounds of stuff with me. Like, let's do it. So yeah. So
well, I was listening to a product by a guy called Alexander Marsh, who's a British mentalist.
Oh yeah, he's great.
Yeah, he did Penguin, and he was talking about stagecraft. It was not magic. It was talking stagecraft, and he said he's got a lot of friends who are stand-up comedians. And a lot of what he does when he creates his stage act is based around stand-up comedians. And he talks about, when you're telling a joke, you've got to think about the premise of the joke and the structure and the setup and the payoff. And he said that's the same thing that people need to think about when they're performing a piece of mentalism or a piece of magic. And the problem is a lot of magicians don't do that. And he suggests that even if you don't ever want to do stand-up, you should study how a comic writes jokes, because that will help you better when you're performing on stage.
There's a form and a structure to joke writing that I don't think people who are not living in that world don't realize that there is a structure to what's going on. And the best comics, I think, can recognize that structure and also know when to subvert it. I'm a very big fan of Dylan Moran. He's one of my favorite comics. He's an Irish comic who lives in Scotland right now, and if you looked at his act from the outside, it would look like there's no form. There's lots of absurd humor. But if you listen to his old stuff and then listen to his new stuff, you can see the recognizable form, and you can see how he mastered it, and then how he has learned to subvert these expectations from the audience who are aware of the usual structure of jokes, and beyond the idea of setup, punchline, tag. There's a lot of different moving parts in there that you need to start to understand. And when you understand them, you can begin to use that to your advantage, and really go in lots and lots of different fun places. It's no different than understanding the proper structure of triumph, or of what an ambitious card routine should look like, or how a coins across functions. And when you want to start changing that, I mean, it's a different thing. But with comedy, it's a lot easier to look at it, because it's you can look at it on a page and start to like dissect it on a page. You're not trying to like choreograph movements or anything like that, even though the best comics do choreograph their movements. So it's just, yeah, I think there's so much to learn from doing it, even if you don't want to be a stand-up comic.
And you said earlier on that you've done a few conventions and booked for another one, doing stand-up comedy for magicians. Mm-hmm. That must be horrible. I don't know, but I mean,
it's arguably better than doing magic for magicians.
That's a really good point, actually. Yeah.
I have an album. It's called Nerd is the New Black. It's not very good, but but the last bit on that is largely what I'm asked to do at conventions, because it is a completely true story with a very minor embellishment of a time that I thought I was going to a magic shop and I accidentally walked into a strip club, which is a 100% true story. But that's largely what they're asking me to do, not like any of my like weird jokes about home ownership or being, political comedy or anything like that. It's definitely like magic. It's a magic centric story that is horrifyingly embarrassing, and I've just decided to own that story and use it to make money.
Fantastic. Well, let me ask you one more question about stand-up.
You're
obviously very good at it.
Thank you.
It's obvious with everything that you've done and how knowledgeable you are with it. And you talked earlier on about you wanted to move away from juggling because there was more of a longevity when it comes to magic as a career. So obviously you're looking at this from a business point of view. Isn't there an argument to say that if you skip the magic and you just focused on stand-up, that's just equally as sort of potentially long as a career and still give you the opportunity to perform in front of people? Or, is that I suppose I'm saying is why magic when you're so good at stand-up comedy?
It's actually a business. It's another business decision. I spoke about this on another podcast at length at one time, but and I've talked about this actually a number of times, and I think it bears repeating. About 4 or 5 years ago, my partner and I had a very serious conversation, and I was sort of like lamenting that a club didn't book me and they chose someone else. And I was just sort of, kicking the rocks and upset. And she said, as a comedian, you're very funny, but you're just another white guy. You're good, but you're just another white guy. As a magician, you're something special. When I see other magicians watch you, I see them get very excited and I see them want to talk to you. And she would like reference the fact that like we'd have people over for dinner trying to have a conversation about something else because we wanted to like watch our house so we can go on holiday, and they would just want to talk about magic with me instead, or ask me to do stuff. These are magicians that we were doing this with, and she was like, so why don't you focus on magic? I'm not saying stop doing comedy, but stop trying to like do both things at the same time and just see what one hits. Just focus everything on magic. And I was like, okay. And within a year, I won the IBM, got on Fool Us, had a Penguin Live lecture, and 2 hit products that were financial and critical successes. So I sort of stepped back after that, and I was like, wow, she's right. And I've had a lot more time to reflect on that. And what I realized is that it's okay to love something you're bad at. Not that I'm bad at comedy, but I'm just not great at it. I'm never going to compete with Harrison Greenbaum as a stand-up comic. Harrison is arguably a more talented comedian than I am. And that doesn't mean that I can't hold my own and continue to do stuff and feature at clubs periodically, put out an album every once in a while, continue to get booked as a stand-up all over the place. But continue to practice that craft and allow it to inform my magic. But I had to recognize a limitation, and I had to recognize where I was. I like doing comedy much more than I like doing magic. I would much prefer to do that. There's a lot of different stuff that I do that is comedy related that the magic world has no idea about, and I'm not like out there promoting it because I understand that magic is like my main source of income, and I need to treat this very carefully and continue to focus on it. But it's, and I look at this with a lot of other magicians too, and there's a lot of other magicians who they want to go pro, or they want to be a creator, and they want to do these things, and you just sort of have to like step back and go, it's not going to happen for you. That's okay. Like it's okay to still engage in this hobby and this craft if you're not going to be the best in the world at it. So you can be fine at it and still have a lot of fun, but you should also recognize, like, I approach everything from a realist standpoint. I'm probably one of the more center people you will meet as far as like how I engage with the world, because I even though I portray someone with lots of strange abilities and powers, I still have to work with the tools that I'm given and the set of facts that I'm given. And even though I want the world to be different, I have to engage with what I am given. And so I accept reality and move forward with it. And in the case of comedy versus magic, I appear to, for whatever reason, have been gifted at magic, and people want to hear what I have to say. They want to watch me do it. I appear to be able to do wonderful things with that. And so I'm going to continue to focus on that while still enjoying comedy, but just not engaging with comedy in the same professional capacity that I would magic.
Totally understand. And that makes a lot of sense. And it's really something that a lot of magicians and performers should really look at themselves. Do you think that your experience doing stand-up comedy makes you a better magician?
Oh, 100%. Absolutely. I have like zero fear of a trick failing, because if it does, I know that I can laugh. So I used to do this thing with a book test that probably angers magicians, but you've probably had this experience, Craig, where you're using an impression device and you get the peak and their handwriting is atrocious. And you just like, you can't, there's nothing you can do. You've tried to, you said write clearly because everyone's going to look at your handwriting later, and they still just like, or whatever, or the impression device just doesn't work. And my book test is like a very big buildup to that moment. And when I get it, like, man, that audience goes nuts. But I continue to do that because if I get the peak and it's not good, I just have no idea what it is. I just decided, well, I'm going to guess. And if I get close, I'll take the hit. If I don't, I just throw my whiteboard to the ground and say, well, you need better handwriting. And then I storm over and like move to the next thing. Right. Which is just like, so I'm blaming my audience for something which is not like, you're not supposed to do that as a magician, but I'm also sort of revealing how the trick worked. And so it's okay because it's, and I have kind of an aggressive character when I'm on stage. So it's, but it like as a comedy piece, it works. And that is something that I gained from doing stand-up and understanding that if you really take a bit far and really commit, you can do something very dumb at the end and people will go for it, and they'll be all about it. So I have no fear of stuff working, of stuff failing. I'm occasionally it turns into something great. Obviously I want to do the best magic as possible, and I want to take care of the art and do really amazing things for people, but sometimes your electronics fail. Sometimes the lighter that you bought doesn't light up and you have to cover that, or sometimes the deck, you forget what you're doing and shuffle a stacked deck. I mean, like, stuff happens, and my experiences on stage as a stand-up comedian have allowed me to just basically take anything that comes at me and go, this will turn out fine. I can either magic my way out of it or comedy my way out of it, and I've just got more options.
It's great. It's like you've got this tool bag and you can reach in and take whatever you need depending on the situation.
Yeah, I mean, I've had shows where my table got knocked over, my props scattered everywhere, and there was like it would have taken 20 minutes to put something back up just because like the stage something happened on the stage, and I could just go into 25 minutes of stand up comedy and not worry about it, right? So I can and then as I'm doing the stand up, I can like pick up a trick and like do the trick and then dive back into another joke as I'm doing stuff. So it's just basically it's given me the ability to have another 25 to 30 minutes of material that I know that I can just like crank out if something bad happens.
That's great. Now you're a very busy performer. You are a very successful. You perform at a very high level. What percentage split is it between doing close up and doing stage? Because I know you've got chops as a close up magician. You just talked about how you studied a lot of Leonard Green stuff. I mean, the ability that you have just with a pack of cards alone is phenomenal and far,
Thank you.
Far above and beyond most magicians' skill level. But you also perform an awful lot on stage.
Yeah. So I don't know, about 8-9 years ago, I got sort of hooked up with a burlesque troupe, and they were having me host. And the jokes were fine, but I sort of like we ended up needing to fill a lot of bits, and so I started working on like stage stuff around 8 years ago. It was never really like with an intent to do a show, but it sort of like it ended up developing a lot of stuff. Um, and so with you can't do a close-up trick in a burlesque show, and you're in like a very different environment. Like they are like the audience is not there to see the host. They're just not. I'm there to sort of like keep make it seem like we're not all here to do for a different reason. And so I started working on some stage stuff for that, and then but most of my gigs were close up. I love cocktail hours. Walk around is like my favorite thing to do in the world. I love like like rocking up to a table, wearing, because I have the that ridiculous holster that looks like a Secret Service, or like you I wear that under a suit. When I go get a new suit, I bring that. I have the tailor like make this suit so my suit still falls really nice and I can wear that thing. I love that thing. Uh, High caliber magic or whatever it is. I don't care how ridiculous it looks. But I love just walking up to a table with nothing in my hands, doing a few things, having a good time with people, and then like walking away. It's so much fun for me, especially because I can hit tables over and over again and do different things. I love restaurant magic. All that stuff is like my favorite thing to do. But these companies that were hiring me to do this would be like, well, can you do a thing on stage? And so, and especially as like my sort of as my business increased and I was getting booked over and over again by these large companies, I started to actually like go, well, I should probably have a stage show. And I'm fortunate that before I worked for Penguin, I lived in Columbus where the P3 Magic Theater is, and and like Nick LaCappa would book me a lot to fill time and space on shows where they were light. So I was able to actually like work it out in front of like crowds that were there to see magic. Uh, Even now, like a global pandemic aside, I'd say that it's probably like a 70-30 split, 70% close up, 30% stage. But I'm still doing a lot of, I'll still do burlesque shows. I still do burlesque conventions. I still get booked on a lot of comedy festivals, and the comedy festivals want me to come do magic. And so we don't have time to set up like cameras and screens and stuff like that for like when I do my sort of like formal evening show, which is a close-up show, but with a camera on my hands that's projected on a giant screen over my head. Um, when I do the Chicago Magic Lounge or the Magic Castle, they put me in the close-up gallery, which is fun. But I think the stage show is probably at a point now where I would be comfortable doing it at the castle or the lounge. I do Mystique Dining Theater on a pretty regular basis now, and that's really more of a stand-up type thing. Like you can do close-up in that room, but it doesn't really work the way it's very much like a parlor show. And then there was some theaters in town that work with a lot of comedians in Columbus on a regular basis, and they were like, "Hey, why don't you come do a show here?" And so I ended up building like a full hour show, sort of with an eye towards like maybe doing cruise ships someday. Like that sort of like interested me, because I just like being on boats. Erik like boat. But yeah, it's still about 70% close up, 30% stage. Cause I have so much fun in close up. Cause I just really like beating people's brains out of their ears with card tricks.
And you know, do you do stuff other than cards? Because I know you're amazing at cards, and I've heard you say cards a lot in this interview. Do you do other stuff, or is it primarily all card material?
Yeah, no, I mean, I do double cross because you're an idiot if you're not doing double cross and close up. So Flight 101 by Roddy McGee is one of my favorite tricks to do in close up now. I feel like that's like a sleeping, like I'm kind of glad that not a lot of people do that trick because it's the best ring flight on the market, and I don't care what anyone says. Making a borrowed ring appear on its spectator's keys is just like the strongest possible magic you can do. So I do that. I have some coin tricks I do. As a matter of fact, my opener is a coins across with a smoke machine because smoke machines are money in the bank for lay people. They think you're the Michael Bay of close up magic. They can't help but be like, what's going on? And then other people are like, why is there fog in here? What's going like? So it just like makes people want to talk to you more. I've owned every smoke device because I believe in them wholeheartedly.
And which one are you currently using very quickly?
It's called Ego. It's made by this Chinese company. You can only get them on like eBay or some sites that I'm sure are filling your computer with viruses. They're like $100. Every time I see one at a convention, I buy it. So I've got like 4 of them. But it's so reliable. It's small. It puts out a bunch of smoke, and the remote fires every time. Is the thing is there's a lot of smoke devices out there where the remote doesn't fire. And they're wireless and it doesn't fire because they're the ones where it's wired. It'll go every time. But I don't, I use I think I used Pure Smoke forever, but I hated the feeling of being strapped up. So I switched to the Vapor Watch and had all kinds of problems with that. Used Hal Miranda's Smoke Watch, liked it, but I used my Apple Watch for timing purposes, and I didn't want to be an idiot with 2 watches, so I moved away from that. And I found this thing, and it's so good. But it's just like lowercase e, uppercase G, lowercase O, and it comes in like a little zipper pouch. And it looks like it's 3D printed in someone's basement, but it's so good. Yeah, but I do coins across. I do double cross. I do some rubber band stuff. I'm working on Convergence by Joe Reinfleisch right now. It just came out. It's really good.
Amazing.
And I do some mentalism, and then I do a swap with a driver's license, where I like my driver's license and the driver's license changes places, and their driver's license ends up inside my Razor wallet, which is a lot of fun. I've been doing that for a long time. I really like that a lot. There's something about like performing with some people's driver's licenses. It's really cool. And then I'm trying to think of what else. Oh, I do Sax dice routine a lot. It's the Bob Sheets. It's the rules.
It's a classic. It's brilliant.
I love that trick, and there's something really fun about it, especially because like you throw the dice on the table and people are like, and you can talk about gambling, and it's a lot of fun to talk about gambling with that, just because I do so much card material. And then the card material I do for people is pretty offbeat. Like I really don't do the ambitious card. I don't do card to impossible location. I do a lot of like very visual stuff. It's on my Murphy's lecture. It's called a party piece. I'd really like to properly shoot it someday because I don't know how to convey on video what it looks like, but it's like 9 bits of discrete magic in less than 60 seconds. I mean, cards like it's just like mentalism piece, and then the card is everywhere, and then it's nowhere, and then it's like coming out of my pocket, then it's coming out of their ear, and then the deck vanishes. And it's just a lot of like stuff. It was my response to the ambitious card routine, but I do like full deck oil and water routines for people. I'm doing like ace cutting like on tables with hard surfaces. I got a lot of like sort of unusual material that uses challenging sleights that I'm doing. That it's not like that's not sort of standard fare. You up until very recently, you would not see me do the ambitious card for an audience. I do the ambitious card now, but it's like an odd back, and it's a way for me to do just phenomenally difficult moves in front of people because it brings me joy.
Well, you know what? Let me pick you up on that here.
Yeah.
I tend to find, as you know, on this channel, I get a lot of newer magicians come on. And one question I get asked over and over again is, I've been working on this new trick with some very difficult sleights. I've been working on this new sleight, and every time I go to try and perform it in front of a real audience, I bottle it and I go back to the stuff that I've always done. And the question always comes up, how can I take the stuff that I'm practicing and actually put it into my working set without worrying and causing myself stress and anxiety that it's not going to work? I mean, you do
just do it.
Incredibly difficult stuff. So you're definitely the person that can answer that.
Yeah. So my ambitious card starts with something called the Spanish train change, which is I'm second dealing a double into a Stuart Gordon turnover lift, or Stuart Gordon turnover, if that makes sense. So it's like, so it's it looks like so like that, and then so that's a double. So I'm effectively starting off with a third deal, and it turns into a second deal, but I'm dealing a pair that stays together and then into it. It's a lot of fun, and I use it so that I can hide the back of a card and then change the color later on, which is a lot of fun. And my advice to you, and I think there are probably some more established magicians that would disagree with this, is my advice is just go do it. I can't tell you how many times that I've been palming a card and forgotten that people are standing behind me. They can see that, or I go to do a Macmillan one-handed turnover switch on a table at a cocktail event, and one card is supposed to come out, but two come shooting out. I can't tell you how many times I tried to snap deal into someone's hand, but hadn't really thought through all of the angles, and it didn't work out. I've got stuff. I mean, if you're working on something, that means that you've got other material. If one trick fails, then you just go do one. You do one after that works. Like you don't put your experimental material up front or at the end. You do it in the middle. You do something awesome in the beginning. You do something you're working on in the middle. You do something awesome to close. If you're at a gig, right? If you're just with friends, it doesn't matter. I think that I care deeply about the art of magic, but I am also very cognizant of the fact that you can't hurt magic. It's like you can't destroy it. I hate these people who are like, Instagram's killing magic. No, Instagram is just allowing magic to exist in a different way. It's not going anywhere. The humans have been doing magic for 3,000 years, as far as I'm concerned. If you consider cups and balls as something, the earliest form of it, probably before that. We've been doing weird stuff with cards since the second deck of cards was printed. If you fail, you learned something. If you did it well, you learned something else. Just do it. If you when people ask me how do you do these difficult things in front of paying audiences, why do you do that? I mean, the answer is because I think it's fun, right? And I got to the point where I don't have fear of doing these difficult sleights in front of people because I did it in front of people, because I don't have anxiety over it, because I know I've done it in the past. And you have to do something for the first time in front of somebody at some point. And if you never do it in front of people, then you never will. So I say do it. And obviously when I'm getting paid a lot of money to be somewhere, I'm doing a material. I'm not screwing about at all. But that's a different set of circumstances, right? If I'm getting paid $50 to do a buddy's party because he asked me to, I don't accept gigs for $50. I just want to make that clear. But if you're early on and your buddy's hey, come to my Super Bowl party and do a couple of card tricks, I'll give you $50 and you can drink as much beer as you want, then have fun, right? It doesn't matter. You're not going to hurt magic. You're not going to kill magic. Stop being precious about it, because it's if you're too precious and you don't share this with stuff, then why are you doing it? I guess is my question. I mean, and that's not fair to say. I mean, it's perfectly fine for you to want to engage with this as a hobby and never perform for people. But if you want to go do stuff for people and you're having anxiety about that, you need to learn how to manage your anxiety. And the best way to manage anxiety is to just confront it, at least with magic and not with spiders. That's a very different anxiety you need to get over. So yeah, I don't know. Sorry. That's it. Just go do it.
That is fantastic advice. Now, I want to talk about something else right now, which is competitions, because obviously you've talked about how you won the IBM.
Yeah.
And I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that when FISM starts again, you have been accepted to go and perform at FISM and compete at FISM.
Yeah, I'm accepted to compete at FISM North America. That's the qualifiers. It's not a year where there is like a. Sometimes the FISM falls in line with when like the IBM SAM mixed convention is, and so they'll do the FISM qualifiers at that. But I'm going to Quebec City in September, so that actually just got kicked back off. I literally had to pay my registration fee today to go do that. So I will be competing at FISM. So you compete in there's a qualifying round to get to compete for your sort of continental area. I would be competing on behalf of North America, and then the following year is when the big one, when FISM actually is. And so I just want to go compete, say I did it. I don't think I'll win. I don't think I'll place. I just want to go do it. I just want to go have fun. But yeah, I'm doing the same routine. I'm doing the same routine that I won the IBM with. That was because you have to submit the routine ahead of time. You can change it a little bit in the lead up to it, but it can't be like fundamentally different. It is an extended version of what people have seen on Fool Us. There's a beginning to it that you don't see on Fool Us that sort of like makes the whole thing interesting, and I can give the deck away and be like, hey, take a look at this. So this is yours to have and look through and see if you can find the work, because there is none. So but it's very much a competition piece, and so I am going to be competing at FISM.
It's fantastic. Now, have you got? I mean, just forget about FISM. I mean, being in a position where you're actually in a qualifier to go and represent North America is a huge deal when you consider how many magicians there are. Huge deal. But the fact that you won the IBM, I mean, that's huge as well. It's the holy grail for magicians to win a competition. Do you, as somebody who has successfully won many competitions, is there any advice that you can give magicians in terms of competing and ultimately winning a magic competition?
Yeah, I think Rick Merrill has a really interesting set of lecture notes that's about competing that is well worth reading. There are some tips that I picked up from him, like when to practice, which are really interesting. He talks about finding out when the competition is and practicing around the same time as the competition, because you're the time of day and the way you are, your skin will have different qualities. Rick goes really deep into that. It's Rick's road to FISM and winning the Grand Prix, which is amazing. And I picked up some good tips from John George as well over the years. One of the things that I did to prepare for both Fool Us and the IBM was I'd host wine and cheese parties at my house, and I would get another magician would come, and he would be sort of an opening act, and then I would perform the piece that I was going to. And I had comment cards for everybody, and you were not allowed to have your second glass of wine for the evening until you had filled out the comment cards. And it was all anonymous too. So it was like, this is my friends, but it's like lay people watching it. So I do this for both magicians and for lay people. And sometimes I would mix them. I would have lay people and magicians in the same sort of performance, because you're looking for different things. But I would read that and make notes and change it, and then get a different group of friends, and we would repeat that. So I've still got a lot of those comment cards for the Invisible Monty piece. As far as winning the competition, I think it's important to understand the rules that are involved. Different competitions score very differently. The IBM happens to be very heavily weighted towards entertainment value, and so the Invisible Monty routine is not necessarily funny, but there is a lot of like interesting things happening with like people engaging with invisible objects and those objects disappearing and reappearing. And I'm treating it very matter of fact, as though this is a gambling demonstration. And that routine is like two different points of construction. One is it is intentionally difficult and uses somewhat well-known moves that are known to be difficult and chained together to achieve a high technical score. Because when you watch that routine, a lot of that routine is me winking at you going, I'm about to do this move. Look how difficult this is. Yes, I did do that move. But I do that on purpose. There are arguably better ways to do that routine that would be far more baffling or impressive. But that is not, it's constructed specifically as a competition piece. And so I'm choosing technically difficult material. The other side of it is I'm using very common tropes in magic. That routine works well with lay people because they've seen it on Fool Us and now they want to see it in person, right? As magicians, it works much better because magicians understand the typical construction of a Monty routine. So in the point where I'm like bending the corner of the card, that even though when you understand the method and the underworkings of that has nothing to do with what's going on. I'm not going to do a corner. I'm not going to bend a corner on a different card and switch it over. That is a very important part of the way many Monty routines are constructed, and the entire way through. The build up, the point where they win, the point where they lose, then the point where they think that they're going to have one over on you. All of that stuff is taking very well established things in the magic world and allowing the magicians to go, oh, okay, I'm with him, I'm in on this. And then because the rest of the routine is constructed not at all like a Monty routine, it's more constructed like a series of transposition effects. Then that's where it sort of like fools them there because it catches them off guard. They didn't know that I was going to do this. So I think that those are things to keep in mind, is that if you go to compete in the IBM, you want it to be entertaining. And so the routine is entertaining for magicians for very different reasons than it is entertaining for lay people. I think but understanding those rules is very important because I know the IBM and the SAM score very differently. And it's not hard to find out how those scores happen. So if you're constructing a routine specifically for competition, that is probably one of the most important things because that will affect how you put something together. The other thing I would say is, you probably, your instinct is to say, well, the cups and balls is a classic in magic. I'm going to create an award-winning cups and balls routine. That is absolutely the wrong thing to do, because because in the judge's mind, I've ended up judging a lot of magic competitions as well. In the judge's mind, I'm now comparing your cups and balls routine to every cups and balls routine I've ever seen. So unless it is just amazing, and like inventive and doing things that I've never seen before, you're probably not going to do well. It's also important to take a look at what's going on in the competition world. I mean, go look at Physimax from previous years, right? If you want, you can sort of see where competition magic is going if you look at a lot of the FISM stuff, and you can go, oh, okay, like this is going to be popular for quite some time. Erik Chen's act is great, and so is Shin Lim's, and you can tell that a lot of the stuff that's going on there and some of the methods that are being used, very popular in competition acts. When I was competing, which was when I was more actively competing, which was right around the time that Erik Chen won FISM, there were a lot of people in competition with very interesting tables that did very interesting things. And that's not to take anything away from him. I'm just saying that there are trends that you can see, and you will want to be aware of those. I think going to compete at some of those higher levels is where you want to pay attention to the trends.
Yeah.
And so I guess those are a little bit of advice. I mean, you can get really deep into it, but I think that, the main thing is understand scoring, perform it a lot for people. So that was what I was getting to with those wine and cheese parties, where I'm not just getting feedback, I'm also getting flight time. I think a lot of the people that I saw in competition who are arguably better than me, and could have easily won, probably didn't have as much flight time as I did on the routine, because bedroom practice and off practice in your studio is very different than doing it in front of an audience. And so that routine, by the time that it actually got out there and was doing stuff, had been performed in front of people a lot. Yeah. It ended up going. It won an award at a very small convention, a good convention, and I'm proud of that award. And it ended up, because of that, it ended up going into my theater show that I was performing a lot, because it was a good way to tell that story and be like, hey, look at me. This is part of the reason you should come to the show, because I won an award. You don't know what this award means, but it was also a way to shoehorn it into a show that I was doing a lot so that I could get more and more flight time. So by the time it goes to the IBM, I've still got a lot of nerves because I'm performing in front of magicians and I'm being judged by really, really good people. But it's a different set of nerves than I've only done this in front of people 4 times. I may have done it a million times in my bedroom, but I've only done it for people 4 times. And I think what ended up winning me and I was not a judge, and I couldn't tell you for certain, but I think that in a number of the rooms where I competed at the IBM, I was very relaxed and joking with people. And so the entertainment value went up. And because the IBM scores heavily weighted that way, it boosted my scores quite a bit because of that way.
That makes total sense. I've heard advice given from magicians in the past regarding competitions that you shouldn't try and create an act specifically for a competition, and instead you should just go out and do the stuff that you do at gigs. But every time I've interviewed somebody on this channel that's done well at a high level competition, like Mark O'Bron, like Sean Farquhar, they always advise putting together an act specifically for that competition. From what you've said, I'm guessing that you fall in that category as well, right?
Yeah, competition is an artificial environment. The stuff that you do for lay audience is very different than what you're going to do for magicians. And it's it's competition. We want to see amazing stuff, right? We want to see the world turned on its ear. We want to be fooled. We want to see things that we have no idea how it works. If everyone rocked up to the competition and was doing like stuff like straight out of David Roth's book, it wouldn't really be much of a competition, right? I mean, you want to see something, you want to see something that you've never seen before. And the judges are magicians. They want to be fooled. They want to be entertained. And I think that that's the way to do it, because when you construct a routine for, say, working on a cruise ship, there are a lot of things that you have to keep in mind as you're doing that. You can't use a cell phone because you're not going to have cell signal when you're crossing the Atlantic, right? Or you're surrounded by glaciers in Alaska. You probably don't want to use electronics at all, because if it breaks, you're up a creek and you need to do stuff, right? You work in a corporate environment, right? You need to have a prop that look a certain way, because you want to that you charged them that check with all those zeros. You don't want them looking at paper bags and markers and crayon for signs or stuff like that. Competition's the same thing, right? You're in an artificial environment. You're probably going to be on a stage that was constructed the day before, with a really, really nice light kit, and then you're going to be working with an interesting microphone that you probably will never work with anywhere else, because that mic was rented specifically for this. You have a certain amount of time. There are rules, like you can't have confetti. So, the confetti that you use over in this gig is strictly verboten in competition. There are certain things you're not going to be allowed to do, like you might not be able to have a stooge, where you could have a stooge in real life, or the time limit is very particular. There's probably material that they don't want you using. You're not allowed to talk about certain topics. It's an artificial environment. So why would you do something designed for a rock around strolling gig in an area where you've got 2 minutes to set up, and then 3 minutes to be done, and then 2 minutes to get out, because the stage has to be clear for the next performer to come in. So yeah, no, there may be a couple of competitions where you should do your regular stuff. The strolling competition or the Magic Castle, absolutely do the stuff you normally do, right? But if you're gonna go compete at IBM or FISM or the SAM National Convention, no, that competition, that you need to have something specific to that.
And that brings us on to the subject of creativity.
Yeah.
Because you obviously created this competition act, which has been so well received, hence the accolades that you've had. But also, over the years, you've created your own magic as well, which is something that I want to touch on.
Yeah.
Do you have any advice on creativity, both creating something for your own personal use, but also creating something that you might eventually market and share with the world?
Yeah, find something good in a book that no one has read, then wait till the author is dead and claim it's yours.
Great approach.
No, don't do that at all. No, I think part of it is understanding what your voice is, understanding like how you're performing, why people want to look at you. I think that's probably the most important thing. When I'm performing close up, I'm very casual. I'm sort of casual, but also aggressive, and I tend to like make jerky motions. I want to be like fun and like push the envelope a little bit. And so I'm willing to do very bold things. A lot of my routines involve me like openly moving cards around so I can do stuff either to set it up or to justify some other motion. I steal a lot of watches in my theater shows so that I can, because the end of my silk to egg is a watch comes out of the egg. So I need to have stuff that will allow me to steal a watch at some point during the show that I can hang on to and then give it back to him later. But I also sort of understand that that's tends to be how I'm going to act on stage. And so the material sort of develops that way. I think it's important to start with material that's already been created and then play with that and understand the rules before you start to break them. I'm working a lot on transposition stuff right now because I came up with something that I think is kind of cool. I'll talk with you about it off pod to see if you've seen this anywhere, because no one else seems to have seen this idea. But a lot of it's just play. I build around moves. That is probably not the best thing for people. But I get very interested in a particular type of move, probably because of my background as a juggler. But that, the genesis of the invisible Monty routine is the McMillan one-handed turnover switch. I wanted to do that in a routine. I wanted that to be like the final moment routine. And it's sort of built out from there. And then the mixing in the snap deal and figuring out like, really using it as a way to showcase the snap deal, not as a vanish, but as like a switch. Because it's weird that routine fools people who don't realize how often I do the snap deal in that routine. So for me, it's a lot of like, how can I use this move? What is an interesting and novel way that my hands can move that will solve this? And then the scripting sort of builds itself out from there. That works for me. That might not work for other people. Other people might want to start with a concept or like an image and then work backwards. I think some of the best creators work backwards, where they know where they need to go. They know what the final image is, what that miracle is, and then getting the method is a lot easier from there. I know a couple of creators who just like screw around and they find methods and then they go, oh, okay, well, this method is really interesting. How do I apply it to an end thing? But I think the thing that all people who create, and I don't create a lot, I'm not as prolific as other people, just because I don't like building gimmicks. I'm not interested in arts and crafts. I don't like splitting cards. I don't have anything against using gimmicks. I use a lot of gimmicks, but I just don't like making them or inventing them. My brain doesn't think that way. But I think everybody who does create their own material, it often comes from a sense of play or solving a problem. Very often I approach something as I'm solving a problem. If I decide I want to work on a particular plot, I'm trying to solve a particular way that I want it to be done. So I think that's it. I don't consider myself the most creative guy in the world. I'm usually good at taking other people's stuff and making it better. And I feel like that's definitely where I excel. But that is solving problems and looking at someone else's work and going, oh, you stopped too soon. This is where it needs to go. Or I see why you're doing this is because you probably were unaware of this particular method. And so if you substitute this for that, it can make it better. And I don't think that there's anything wrong with doing that. I think some of the best magicians start with other people's work and then build and change and play with it until it becomes something fundamentally new. I know the triumph that I do is firmly rooted in a triumph on Ben Earl's Past Midnight DVD. And it became something totally different by just me playing with it and wanting to add different things to it and make it into something different.
That's amazing. That's amazing. You've talked several times during this interview about Fool Us. I'd like to just quickly talk about the Fool Us experience, because you did amazingly well on there. I mean, you did really, really well.
Thanks.
And wow, I mean, those comments from a social proof point of view for a website and the footage is just amazing. Did they come to you? Did you go to them? What was the experience like? Did you enjoy it?
I went to them. I had a blast. It was a really good time. You know, I had a very good experience working with them. I don't know anyone who hasn't had a good experience with them. I hired a consultant. I hired the magic firm to, you know, kill my babies, as they say, and then tell me what was good and what wasn't.
Mm-hmm.
We I did a lot of work with Brent Braun to sort of, you know, because Brent, it was very comforting to have Brent because he'd consulted for so many other people on the show that I felt armed with foreknowledge walking in, because there's no really good way to prepare for a situation like that. You know, I mean, like, I think the people who are best prepared for Fool are the people who've done it 2 and 3 times. The people who've done it, who've never done it before, it's really hard to like explain to people like what it's going to be like going onto the show until you get through it, because it's just kind of a whirlwind. But they really do hold your hand the whole way through and like take really good care of you. I worked pretty closely with Michael Close to develop the routine above and beyond what it was. uh, the I actually credit the IBM win very much to performing on Fool Us, because I've taped Fool Us in like March and then competed at the IBM in August, and so there was a lot of like work that had gone on to make it good enough for TV that that ended up showing up in the final product that won the award. Um, there was a major problem with the routine in the way the final card was displayed that Johnny Thompson solved, and it was something that Brent and I threw our heads against for a while, that Michael Close and I talked about for a long time, and none of us could solve it. And Johnny looked at the routine once and said, "Just hold the card like this, and that fixes everything." And it just suddenly the routine was complete. And
Wow.
it's yeah, I was very lucky that I got to work with Johnny. I think the following season was when he passed away. So I'm just eternally grateful. Johnny Thompson was so nice and so cool working with me on that routine, and you know, kind of came over after, you know, you do a couple of dress rehearsals with the directors and the writers and the camera guys so they can see everything. And you know, Johnny came over and was like very candid with me and talked to me. He's like, you know, I really like the routine. The moves are really bold, but just why don't you try this? And we did it, and it clicked just like that. It was really great. Uh, the the filming was a lot of fun. I had a really good time. You know, you sort of, you know, you're not supposed to know who won and who fooled them and who didn't, but you are like, you know, the holding area is like underneath Penn and Teller stage, and when someone fools them, you can hear it. So uh, I'll, you know, the crew is amazing. So I use a servant when I work seated, and the in order to even have a ghost of a chance of fooling them, and I had myself at about a 30% chance of fooling them, because I did an analysis of every card magician before me who'd been on and who fooled them and who didn't and why I thought they'd fooled them. I still have that spreadsheet somewhere. And I was like, oh, okay, these parts might fool them. You know, but they definitely have holes in their knowledge in certain card stuff. But the show's not really about fooling them. The show is about like displaying cool magic to lay people. And so I didn't care if I fooled them or not. I knew that if I kind of gamed out like the ways that they might fool me, and I knew I wanted like that. Uh, I wanted that banana line. I think it's Brent talks about like one of the reasons Piff did so well on there is that like after the trick doesn't matter, like whatever Penn and Teller says doesn't matter. It's Penn eating, or it's Piff eating a banana that everyone remembers. And
Yeah.
so I wanted a banana moment, and I thought, well, the one thing I'd never seen was somebody speaking back to them in code. And so there's many different versions of what I said to them, and the final version of "I'm laterally aware of what you're trying to snap out there" was what I felt was like the closest thing that Penn would have said to me. And I had a couple different versions in my head of like what to say depending on how they busted me.
Mhm.
Um, and because I figured either they were super aware of Leonard Green and his work, or they'd just heard the story of him winning FISM and had never seen the stuff.
Yeah.
And so I was like, well, if they're going to call me anything, it's going to be Leonard Green. I should have something ready to go. And I wanted to code back to them. So that was my moment.
Mhm.
That was what I wanted out of everything else. And I've seen more than a few people have similar coded phrases back to them since then. But it was just a good time. The whole thing goes by really fast. You know, you're waiting forever to go on stage, and then the next thing you know, you're performing, and then right after that, you're out behind the Rio holding your props in one hand and like looking around, going, "What the hell just happened?" And then you go to the bar, and your loving partner who has put up with all of your craziness throughout the entire experience comes up to you and says, "You were great. Did you see Christian? His pockets disappeared." And you know that everything is fine. And then I had to wait 6 months to find out what the hell she was talking about with Christian Engblom's routine.
That's awesome.
It was good. It was good. I had a great experience, but I submitted to them and they thought it was cool. They asked me for a couple of videos because they liked the routine, but they were the original way that I had shot it to submit. There were some flashes that I was like, oh, they should know that I can do this, but this will be fine. I just want them to see the routine. And they were like, no, we need to get this past these people. Can you film it so that it looks perfect? And so I did. And it was great. I had a good time. They worked with me really well. I think the only thing that I sort of, if I had any regret, it would be that I wish that I hadn't talked as much about comedy in my package piece, my intro piece, because the routine is like not particularly funny. Like if you go back and read some of the YouTube comments, people are like, "Why isn't he telling jokes?" And I'm just like, and that's my fault. Like I was thinking of like my act and what I want them to see, and not like the routine that the audience was about to see. But the team was amazing. They heard the story of how I rehearsed for that, which is true. I set up a poster of Penn and Teller the way they were supposed to be in my office, and I had an inflatable dinosaur with Allison's face right here, and then I would practice with their show BS, which was on Hulu at the time, like going over and over again in the background, because I know that in the past I had frozen when a celebrity asked me to do a trick back when I lived in Los Angeles, and I wanted to avoid that. So I tried to like have Penn's voice in my ear as much as possible while looking at photos of them and Allison Hannigan, who I was more excited to meet her than Penn and Teller, because I think she's a really wonderful actress. I really like her in a lot of stuff, and like getting our makeup together was a lot of fun. I found out she owns a tortoise. I also own a tortoise, so we were like getting our makeup done together. Like we bonded over both having giant weird reptiles, and so it was a lot of fun. But I needed to desensitize myself to that, and so the crew who filmed the package took some really nice time to like set up that type of like lab and like make it look cool, way cooler than what was actually in my office. So, yeah, it was a good time.
Well, 2 points on that. One, I totally agree. I'm a massive Alison Hannigan fan. I'm a massive Buffy the Vampire Slayer fan. So I'm a big fan of her and her husband, Alexis Denisof. I thought they were both brilliant in Buffy. Mm-hmm. But very quickly on the Foolus experience.
Yeah.
If a magician is thinking about going on Foolus, when you talked about competitions, you talked about creating your own competition act. Mm-hmm. Is that as essential in Foolus? Because I've seen people like Michael Kent, for example, who went on and just did a standard multiplying bottles. Now, he was hilarious. It was his own routine, and it was the best presentation of multiplying bottles I've ever seen.
Yeah.
But it's still a multiplying bottles routine that would never fool Penn and Teller, but that wasn't the point for him. So, and he's done that in his act for years. And I've seen lots of other magicians. Ali Cook springs to mind. I know he does the duck and thing in his act. Would you say that somebody needs to develop an act specifically for Penn and Teller? Or do you think having that experience and being able to use that social proof, if you've got a good enough trick that you do anyway, that you should just go for it?
I think it depends on why you want to be on the show. I think like I get a series of like mixed responses from magicians when they talk to me about the show. Some people will say, "Oh, you were robbed. I have no idea how you did that trick. There's no way Penn and Teller did. They definitely didn't know, but like, they had me dead to rights." And other people were like, "Well, are you going to go on again? Are you going to get it and try and fool them this time?" And I'd love to do the show again, but I just don't know what I would do. I think that for me, the social currency, the getting on the show was sort of the important part, to have fun. Fooling Penn and Teller will be the icing on the cake. I think it's important to keep in mind what the point of the show is. And I think magicians very frequently forget what the point of Fool Us is, because a lot of magicians view it as like it is this competition you have to go on and fool Penn and Teller, and that's not the purpose of the show. A lot of other magicians think that the purpose is just to show good magic to lay audiences, and they are also incorrect. That is not the purpose of the show. The purpose of the show is to sell deodorant to fans of Riverdale. It's all television is about about filling time between advertising and for a particular demographic. That being said, the purpose of the show really is to the purpose of the show really is to show great magic to people. But if you want to get on the show, you have to keep in mind that sort of joke premise that I told you, was that it's to sell deodorant to fans of Riverdale, because Riverdale is the biggest show on the CW. Right behind that is all of the stuff on the Flash, Arrow, Arrowverse, Supergirl, all that stuff. So if you want to get on that show, I think the smart way to do it is to watch the rest of the CW's lineup, figure out who those shows are intended for, and then create magic that is so enticing and so cool that those people would definitely want to watch it, because that is the group of people that is going to be watching Fool Us. And so the producers are keenly aware of that. I mean, if I was a producer on Fool Us, I would absolutely know what the demographic of the channel I was on. And then I would be looking for magic that would be very interesting to those people. I think that you should submit stuff from your act that is great. You should submit competition pieces. You should create magic specifically for Fool Us. But I think that you need to keep in mind who is watching the show. And it's not magicians. We all watch it because it's a cultural touchstone for us, and magic is the thing that we love. But the people watching the show are not magicians at all. And those are the people that you've got to make like, because those are the people that are going to go on your YouTube and talk about being able to see your nose hairs. I think that I think all of that is really important to keep in mind. If you want to get on the show, keep in mind the network it's on, the people who are watching that show, because you're not there to fool Penn and Teller. You're not there to do something really amazing. You're there to keep that audience watching, and that is the purpose of every television show. That being said, I've never been on the show again. They're not exactly beating down my door to get me back on. I think they've got lots of wonderful magicians on there, and I think everybody should try and take a crack at it. Make it your goal. But if you really want to get on, think about those things. That stuff is really important to consider. If I wanted to get back on the show and was creating magic specifically to get back on that show, I would totally do it. But I think you need to understand your reasons for wanting to be on the show, and you need to, act accordingly. Yeah. So yeah, I'm not sure if that's the answer people want to hear, but I think that keep in mind the real role of television. It'd be a different story if it was still on BBC, where there are no commercials and they're not beholden to advertisers. That's why you see very different shows on British television versus American television, because the revenue streams are different, and that's all important things to think about.
And you know what? Moving on from that, one thing that I've listened to you now through the whole interview, and there's one thing that's come up over and over again, whether you're talking about performing magic, creating magic, appearing in competitions, for about 10 times you've used the word fun. And it just seems to me, Erik, that the most important thing for you is to have fun, which is so important. And I see a lot of magicians, especially professional magicians, and I can just tell they've been doing it for too long. They've lost their passion. And you can just tell when a magician is going through the motions and they've lost the fun aspect of it, and it's become a job. And I think that's something that can happen if you're not careful when you turn pro. And it's great to see that you are somebody who is obviously A, passionate about performing magic and performing, but B, you want to have a good time, you want to have fun, which is so important.
Live fast, die at an acceptable age, and leave a corpse shaped like an animal balloon. That's the motto.
Love it.
Yeah, if you're not having fun doing this, then you shouldn't do it. I think there's plenty of ways to make money and have fun, and there's plenty of ways to make money that aren't fun. You can make a lot more money having very little fun. But at the end of the day, it's just we only get to live this life once. So why do something that isn't fun? As long as it doesn't hurt somebody else and it doesn't hurt me, then I'm going to, if it brings me joy, then that's something I want to be doing. And I'm doing exactly what I want to do. Well, not exactly what I want to do right now, but I'm doing what brings me happiness.
Which is cool. That's great. Now, I want to ask, before we wrap all this up, I've got another question, which is, we have to talk about Penguin Magic, because obviously you're a big part of Penguin. Now, before we talk about your role in Penguin, I have to ask you a question.
Yeah.
You've had a stellar career. You perform at a very high level. You have no problem getting work. You've been on Penn Teller Foolus. You're winning competitions. You've been invited to qualify to compete at FISM. You've created magic that has been a commercial hit. You have the career that a lot of people would dream of. Why did you end up going and working with Penguin Magic? Why? Do you know what I mean? It's I've tried to actually work this out myself before we actually sat down, and I couldn't figure it out why that's something. I'm glad, because you and Nick, between you, are my new favorite double act in magic, and I'm so glad that you're there. And I want to get into this in a bit, and I want to talk about how honest you are and how I want to talk about that. But why did you end up at Penguin?
Health insurance. We don't have a national.
I love it.
I would say that I would say that you are being probably a little generous when you say I have no trouble getting work. Yeah, I don't have trouble getting work, but also I'm pretty big fan of stability. I own the house that I'm broadcasting you from right now, and I like living in it, and I would prefer it to not be owned by a bank. I'm coming through at wonderful quality in because I have a very nice camera there, and this mic is one of my favorite things in the world, and I like owning nice things. So I've even though I've done a lot of high profile gigs and I've got a lot of clients and I make good money as a magician, I have typically always had sort of a day job in the background, whatever it is. Now, at various times, my finances have been like much more magic heavy and others much more day job heavy, and it's. I think that it is a lot of your favorite creators and a lot of your favorite magicians you see doing like a lot of really great things. They're probably not making as much money as you think they are. They're probably making great money, but they're probably not making as much money as you think they are. And they probably have like a bunch of different revenue streams. And I definitely am one of those people. I had an opportunity to work for Penguin Magic and to have a day job doing what I love and being involved in the industry that I wanted to be involved in, that also was very pro me continuing to go out and perform, because that meant that I would be able to field test new products and also like work on other stuff. So, and apart from that, like photography and videography has always been a hobby of mine for a long time. So being able to sort of flex those muscles and learn new things and gain new skills there was very appealing to me. At the end of the day, it really comes down to I don't have to compete as hard for gigs by having a day job, and that is fun is very important to me, but also practicality is very important to me. I see a lot of performers who are like, getting up there in years and they have no savings, and I have a strategy to save money so that when things like a global pandemic happened, I'm not doing something that I don't want to do. So the answer is 100% practicality. So, and it's a great company to work for. It's one of the first places I bought, I bought my first magic trick online from Penguin. I still carry, my wallet's not here. The first download I ever bought from Penguin was $2 window from Jay Noblezada like 20 years ago. And I still carry that trick around in my wallet to do. So it's not a card trick, Craig. But it's who wouldn't want to work at Penguin Magic, right? You get all the cool toys. I was doing Flight 101 and crushing people at gigs before anyone else was. So I get to play with, man, you wish you could know what cool tricks I'm playing with right now, Craig. There's so much cool stuff that I get to play with before you buy it from me.
Eric. You're making me jealous.
Oh, yeah.
And there's so many really cool people at Penguin. Like, You know, you've got so many great people working there. I mean, I'm spending a lot of time speaking to Sean at the moment, as you know.
Yeah.
I've known Tim Trono way back in the day, like when he gave me a guided tour around Murphy's Magic warehouse back in the day. Tim's amazing. The guys that Penguin have surrounded themselves with are just the top of their game, which is why you guys are so good, which is why you guys are so awesome at what you do.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I think it's a good team. I think it's in a good space. There's a lot of really, really good people who work there. You know, Nick Popo works with us in the studio. He's got a lot of really cool magic. He's doing really fun stuff. He's a very talented videographer. You know, Nick teaches me stuff all the time. I learn so much about editing and video effects from Nick and the way to film magic tricks properly, because there's not many people who's filmed as much magic as Nick, but it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun.
That's great. And I'll say the same thing to you that I said to Nick when I interviewed him, which is, for me, I got involved with buying stuff from Penguin Magic back when it was Jay Noblezada and Oz Perlman. And those guys were just amazing. They just made me buy everything. I mean, those two were just amazing. And then when they went away, whenever it was, it felt like Penguin didn't lose their way, but they didn't have somebody there that I could relate to. And you and Nick together, I think that we've recaptured the glory days of the Jay Knox show. I really do. I think that you two work so well together. I said to Nick, and you know, I desperately tried to stay up till 2 o'clock in the morning every Sunday to catch the Cool Box live.
Oh, it's fun.
You guys bounce off each other so well. You're so knowledgeable as well. But and I get the feeling that even take the Cool Box, for example.
Yeah.
I get the feeling that even though, and let's be honest, it's a show that involves pitching people to buy products. It's like QVC for magic. It is. But I don't feel like I'm being sold to. I feel, and the reason I try to stay up, and anybody who's watching this channel, by the way, and hasn't checked out the Cool Box Live, they really should do. It's brilliant. But the reason I try and stay up is because you guys are so knowledgeable. I never know the knowledge bomb that one of you is going to drop, and I'll always find out about something new, and I'll end up with that. Like a couple of weeks ago, I ended up like getting 3 sudden deck 3s for like $30 or something. I'm like, I'm gonna have some of them. This is incredible. So it's just great, and I love that Penguin, and I know that you're involved in this as well.
Yeah.
It's not just about, from a content creation point of view, most other dealers and production companies that you see, their YouTube channel is, it's this trailer, it's this trailer, it's this trailer, it's this trailer. You guys are producing amazing content that I just can't stop looking at. And like I told you off camera last week, it annoys me sometimes because I had the idea to do a video about openers, and I'm like, well, I can't do that now.
I should get you the list. We filmed that like in March of last year.
So yeah, I don't know how heavily involved in everything like that they are, but that's why I'm such a big Penguin fan, because you guys go above and beyond with the YouTube channel and the content, and you and Nick especially, so good on camera together.
I think that there's a couple of different things at play. So like the top 10 lists that have been coming out every Friday were sort of the brainchild of our social media guy, Josh Birch. He'd wanted to do this for quite some time because it makes a lot of sense to do a top 10 list. You know, people new to magic are searching stuff all the time. Top 10 card tricks, top 10 books or whatever like that. So from like a searchability standpoint, it makes a lot of sense. But also, like he wanted stuff to keep pushing out, which was interesting, and he wanted us to do this. And so we said, well, Josh, why don't you come to Columbus and we'll film like 30 of them. So it was like 2 days. So I should probably find this list for you, Craig, so that you know where we're going, so you can do different stuff. But because we filmed like 30 of these over the course of like 3 days in like March, and then Josh left, and then that show Magic Camp came out, and he was like, you guys got to like do a play-by-play for Magic Camp. So we like watched Magic Camp live and then like wrote jokes. It was just the weirdest thing. But then a lot of the other stuff that we're doing along that, some of it is things that we are creating because like, so Nick and I want to sell magic tricks to people, But another thing that's sort of underlying a lot of this is Nick and I want to be better at our job as far as like video production. So one of the things the pandemic has been able to allow us to do is, because we're not bringing audiences into our theater all the time, we're able to just sort of like turn the studio into whatever we want and go, oh, let's try and do something fun with like colors and lights. And you know what? I haven't played with that Steadicam in a while. Well, we know we've got Joe Rindfleisch coming in to film this like crazy rubber band thing. Let's get this Steadicam and play with this and see if we can do some like cool sweeping shots. And then when you're, have you seen the trailer for the Screams at Midnight deck?
Yes, it was brilliant.
Yeah, that was, so Nick wrote, so we got assigned that. We were like, hey, we need a demo for this deck of cards that's coming out. We want to feature the marking system on it, and there's some 3D stuff. Go have fun, guys. And we were like, cool. So Nick had an idea for what we wanted it to be like. And then he, myself, and Nick Popa went into the studio multiple times, and we're like, hey, let's do this. So there's a Pepper's Ghost illusion in that demo. We built a tiny little Pepper's Ghost illusion to actually have ghosts like flying around in front of the deck. Like we have an iPad with some video stuff that we made in there. And then Nick and I both want to be better at graphics. So I'm like participating in this whole like Ships of the Northern Fleet thing that's going on, which is a whole other thing going on. And I'm like constantly playing in After Effects to try and learn to do more interesting titles and be able to do interesting stuff for these demos. Because if we make the demo great, then it's fun to watch and people will want to buy it. But also it makes us better at our job, and so we can do cool things. If you look at the Snaps tutorial, is and where this is leading is when you look at things like the tutorials and how they've gotten better, the Snaps tutorial is a direct result of Nick going, good Lord, this thing is like 2 hours long. We need to be able to tell people like how to find content in this, because we can't chapter stuff with the way the video player works right now. But the video player is better. Did you notice? You can watch things in 1080p. Yeah. So we said, like, let's figure out a different way to do this. And so Nick like learned After Effects to be able, because he was not using After Effects before that. If you watch a lot of the tutorials now, the demos or the tutorials for downloads now, you see credits in them. And that's because I was editing the vast majority of the tutorials and not doing anything with the demos. And I'd noticed some of the ones that I really liked had like Nick had made credits for. And so we made a standardized credits list, and now I can go in there and mess around with that. And so we can make sure that it always looks the same at the end, which is just another thing so that it's not all like this hodgepodge. I'm constantly playing with different gear and wanting to do different things with streaming. When the pandemic hit, when everyone else was like, I'm going to figure out how to do virtual magic, I was like, cool, I'm going to go play video games and figure out how Twitch works. Because it was just, I was like, I've got a day job. It's fine. I'm going to be okay. I'm going to miss performing, but I'm going to figure out something else to fill my time with. And so I went and spent a long time learning how to like do all kinds of insane things. And we were sitting around the studio one day, and we remembered that like a long time ago, the lectures used to be live streamed. And so we were wondering if the infrastructure was still there. And it came from, we just wanted to see if we could do this and also make it better. And as we become better at these kinds of things, it then flows into the products that people buy. And so when you get a product and you're like, oh man, like it's got like this, and it's doing this thing over here, and we're figuring out ways to like make things better. Because the worst thing in the world is when you have so much fun putting together an amazing project, and you go and you read the reviews and people are like mad about stuff. Like, we don't want that. Like that, people like have, so we have to, we want to like make it cool so we can do stuff. So like the live stream is like a direct result of me and Nick going, how can we push this further? How can we do this better? Like, part of the reason that it is filmed, we used to do it in the studio, and we noticed that there wasn't much engagement on the chat. When I was streaming on Twitch, or I still do stream on Twitch, when it doesn't matter what I'm doing. I could be interviewing someone for some improv game I'm doing. I could be playing Dungeons and Dragons with Carissa Hendricks. I could be playing a video game or just practicing magic or just talking to strangers. My chat was active, and I was like dealing with it a lot. It's not a lot of people, but it wasn't active. And so one of the things we noticed is that people like didn't think we were live. Right. They like thought it was pre-recorded because it looks very like produced in there. And we decided to do it from home one day, and just having our headphones on, and suddenly the chat exploded. People were like, oh, these are like us. So that's why it looks that way now.
That's
yeah, because we want to engage with these people. There's two of my favorite things that have happened in that stream are Fistful of Dollars we just talked about it on the stream a few nights ago. Fistful of Dollars was like, the dollar version was like an $80 trick. And the thing was, if you bought it, it came with a gimmick. Now, that gimmick you probably own if you do a lot of coin work. If you don't do a lot of coin work, then this is a really great way to get that gimmick. And we heard from people in the chat that they kind of knew what it was, and they didn't want to buy it because they didn't want to spend that much money. They would really like to learn the routine because the routine looked great. So we went into the office the next morning and we said, hey, people want to buy just the Gregory Wilson routine. Can we do that? And they were like, yeah. So we did. And now you can buy that routine. But that was because we were able to engage with the customers directly, which is something we'd really only done at conventions, right? And so this is like a way for us to engage on a weekly basis. The other thing that I really like is, so we have a Twitch channel that we don't really use it very much, but the stream goes up on Twitch. And I always keep an eye on it because one time a person who was not a magician stumbled in and started going, what are you guys talking about? What's going on? And we were talking about a John Bannon routine. Can't remember which one it was. I think it was like Play It Straight Triumph or something like that. It was like an easy entry. And the person on Twitch goes, oh, this is cool. I've always wanted to learn magic. I think I'll go buy it. Well, I know who that person is. So we watched a magician become created in real time. Like we watched someone like see magic, find out you could buy it, become interested, and then go buy it. And now I've checked back with them and they do the trick for people and they have fun with it and it's fun. So we watched a magician get created in real time, which is something you can't do otherwise. But this, like, we're getting like a really interesting, a very interesting conversation is happening inside this chat that is happening nowhere else in magic. And I'm really, really having fun with it. And we're excited to continue to do other neat things. And what it has evolved into, and this is something I wanted to touch on when you said, we're dropping knowledge bombs on you, but we're not just like selling to you, is that the way the material comes into the show now is we are given a list by management of potential tricks that we could discount. And then Nick and I get to choose from that list what goes onto the show. So we have the ability to discount literally dozens of items every week. But Nick and I make a conscious decision. I like this. I like this. I like this. People should know about this. And so that's where that comes from. So when it's not always my favorite tricks in the world, but like, there's some great stuff. Like I don't do dress code anymore because it doesn't really fit with anything, but I've had a lot of fun with dress code and I know that people should do it because it's a good trick. We're discovering new things too. Cause we'll look at that list and be like, I've never seen that trick before. Well, let me go look at it. Oh, people should know about this. There was a really good, there's really good handling of the 5-in-1 transposition that we found that we were like, oh yeah, people got to see this. It's got a cool visual moment. And it's the same old 5-in-1 transpo gimmick that you all know, but this handling of it was really cool. And we were able to tell people about it. So when we're talking about something on that stream, it's usually, especially when it's in our picks list, it's usually something that we're interested in and excited about.
And I love the fact that you do your Nick's picks and Erik's picks, and it's not a review, but it's kind of like highlighting what you guys would recommend. I think that's great. That's a great way of doing it.
It's there's only so much that you can get from watching an ad and reading the ad copy. And I know that because I write a lot of the ad copy that's on Penguin Magic. If you don't like it, please email me. But there's a delicate balance. I was on Clubhouse. Are you on Clubhouse, Craig?
I do, yeah.
Okay. I was in Clubhouse the other night talking about this with some guys. But there's a delicate balance that you have when you're doing this ad copy thing where like you can't just like out and out say what the method is, right? Because that's exposure. But you have to hint towards stuff and you have to tell people why something is cool. But you can't do that and tell people like the real reason. And it's difficult to have that conversation in a one-sided direction, which is what a demo and ad copy is it's all, you're in marketing, you know this. Yeah. It's very difficult to have that conversation, right? But when it's a back and forth conversation, I can can cue you to stuff and be like, oh, you know what's really cool is this, right? But I know that now because you've told me, you aren't asking me questions that I know that you want the answer to, which I could not have predicted when writing the ad copy or making the demo. I can only tell you what I think is cool, but if you are looking for something else, I can go, oh yeah, the thing that you are interested in also applies to this, which is one of the things that we can do in the stream that we can't do anywhere else.
Yeah, that's brilliant. That's absolutely brilliant. And I think that people forget that everybody is live streaming these days because of the pandemic. But Penguin were live streaming way back in the day before anyone was doing it. Like, like way back in the day, they were live streaming all of their Penguin lives, hence the reason they're called Penguin Live. So it's something that you guys have been doing for a very, very, very long time. It's just recently you've just decided to bring it back in a very different way.
Yeah, it's been really interesting, and we're in a position now that we can do some really, really cool stuff with it, and a lot of the early formats of the stream came from hosting the podcast. Nick still appears on the podcast every week with me, talking a featured download of the week, which is again like I get to pick it down.
Very quickly talk about the podcast because I didn't even know. I'll be honest with you.
Yeah,
I'm not a big podcast guy. There's like 2 or 3 podcasts I listen to. I'm more of a YouTube guy.
Yeah.
And I didn't even realize that there was a Penguin podcast until I got the message off you going, hey, Craig, do you want to be on the Penguin podcast? I'm like, hang on. I just said yes to you. And then I hung up on you. And I'm like, there's a Penguin podcast? I had to go and search for it and find it. I didn't even know. But it's great. It's awesome. You don't see it really advertised anywhere on Penguin, though. That's that you don't see it anywhere.
No, I'm trying to build a 5-year backlog before I tell anyone about it. No, the podcast is fun. So that came from like my second month at Penguin. I was like sitting around with like Woody Aragon or something like that and having like a really cool conversation with him. And I was like, why are we not like recording this? There's just a lot of when you come to film with us, there's just a lot of downtime, right? Because it only takes so long to film a lecture. It only takes so long to film a download. It only takes so long to do the pitch. And I was just like, we were having all these cool conversations that I was like, people would listen to this. And I didn't really understand why we didn't have a podcast. And so I was like, do we have a podcast? And they were like, do you want to do one? And I was like, sure. And they're like, we do now. So that was a mistake that I made. But I'm very proud of the podcast because it comes from sort of 2 areas. One was my weakest area as a video editor was audio, and I wanted to get better at it. And so like we've talked about with a lot of the other stuff, like you want to get better at something, just do it more often. So, being forced to edit a radio program every week, you're going to learn how to do audio. But also it was one of the things that the things that I noticed in having conversations with artists as they were coming through to do the lecture is that they would want to express ideas or tell stories that didn't fit in the context of a lecture. Like that's one of the things we missed in the old live lecture format was that interview with Dan, which was really cool. And that kind of went away with the live acts. And there was, there's a lot of good reasons for that because it was a different thing. It was a different product. And so you end up missing out on stories like Jamie Schoolcraft building a machine shop in a hotel room at Magic Live and, teaching Teller how to like mill a coin. You miss out on conversations with Carissa Hendricks about meta-modernity, which is a fascinating topic. If you want to make a better magic show, listen to the episode with Carissa Hendricks. You don't get to, there's no lecture format or trick format where you get to talk to Chris Kenner about what it was like publishing Magic Man Examiner with Homer Lewag. Like those things don't exist anywhere. And I, at the same time, I always wanted to listen to a podcast like this. It's very much like the reason you run your YouTube show the way you do. And so early on, the management team at Penguin, who tasked me with it, also didn't give me a lot of direction. They said like, you do this, but it's your thing, and we don't want to like infringe on it. We want it to like grow, and if it's successful, it's great. If it's not, we'll assign you something else. We'll do something else. And I was very fortunate that some of the early episodes were really good with really, really strong people with interesting stories. And they gave me a certain amount of journalistic freedom and to talk about stuff. There's there's two episodes around Black Lives Matters during the protests over the summer, which both contain no advertising. Because I felt that was important, because when that happened, I recognized that there was something going on in the magic community, and that I might not be able to ask the right questions, let alone relevant ones, because I didn't have that background. And so I did my best to bring other people in and facilitate the conversation and platform it, but stay as far out of it as I could. And then when the beginning of the pandemic, I spoke to two performers who had different cruise ship related stories, which also those don't have any advertising either. The Tom Crosby one in particular is the most amazing story I've ever heard. He was on a ship with active cases of coronavirus, and countries would not let them dock. And it's the entire story is so worth listening to, because Tom tells this like maybe 18 hours after he got home from this experience. So I can't believe he let me talk. I can't believe he agreed to do the interview with me, but also like being so close to that traumatic experience is amazing. But it's an astonishing story. And I've been able to continue to facilitate and have these conversations with people. Yes, we have an agenda. We want to tell you about other magic tricks to serve that you can buy. There's a discount in it. Every week, there's a featured download that Nick and I talk about and tell you why it's cool. And you can get 25% off of it if you enter the discount code. And you got to listen to the episode to find out what it is. But also, the episode is about a half hour. It's sometimes they get a little bit longer into about the 40-minute area, but I try and keep them to a half hour. And if the conversation is going a lot longer with the magician, then it becomes a 2-part episode. I'm literally after we get off of this, I'm going to finish up this week's episode, which is the second part of an episode with a Canadian pickpocket named James Harrison, which is really interesting. But I think there's a lot of things that you will get out of this, because I have spent usually 2 to 3 days becoming friends with the person before I interview them, because that's how long it takes to shoot some of the lectures. So we're just around each other a lot and become friends. So I think there's a different quality to our conversations, but I want more people to listen to it. And we're going to continue to do more episodes, more interesting things, and get that out there. It's the Penguin Magic Podcast. If you go to podcast.penguinmagic.com, or in any podcasting app, just search Penguin Magic Podcast. We come right up.
I have been listening to them on Spotify.
Yes, we're on Google, Amazon, Apple, and Spotify are the main places.
Yeah, so definitely check it out. It's well worth it. One last question with regards to Penguin, which is how can the listeners to this podcast get on Penguin's radar when it comes to releasing a product? And I'm not talking about the partner program, because obviously the partner program, if I'm accepted, I can just go in and release downloads as much as I want to. But let's just say I've got a product that I'm really happy with, and I want to actually release it and have Penguin's backing behind it. As somebody who's released really commercially successful tricks, and by the way, Super Lucky is one of my favorite things ever, by the way. And also somebody who works on the production of tricks alongside Penguin.
Yeah.
As I say, on whether they get green lit or not, what can I do to get on your radar if I've got a product that I'm happy with, to get you guys to market it? Is there something that I need to do beforehand, or
if it's like a download, the partner program is the way to go. So once it goes to the partner program sort of has 2 prongs. One is the side where we like go, this is amazing, let's make it look like $1 million, and run it through the Penguin machine. And the other side is where we go, yep, you have produced a product. We would love to put it on the website, and here it is. All of those come from the same pool, where it's like where the submit a trick, and then we'll pluck ones out that we feel are really good. A lot of the tricks that you see that are produced, you can usually track back to when they were shot, because you'll notice that a lot of those products are put out with lecturers at the same time, just because it's like more efficient to bring you in for a lecture, and then like over the next couple of days we'll also release some products, and sometimes they get just sort of spaced out. Like a really good example of that was like Daniel Chard came and lectured with us, and we filmed Delete at the same time. Whereas others like Treasury by Derek Ostavani, I think came through the partner program. There's a guy by the name of Sean Dunn. If you know him and you can get a hold of his email, I think if you go back and watch the award show, Sean gives his email in that award show, so that you can just email him directly. But the partner program is the better way to do it. And if you once it comes to the partner program, if we like it and we want to produce it, we'll reach out to you and say, hey, we'd love to make this, put all the Penguin marketing behind it, either, have Nick teach it or bring you to Columbus or have me film it or whatever it is. I think that where getting on our radar, I mean, just having like a really cool trick and explaining very clearly what it is, why you think it's cool. It doesn't have to be like a super high production value. We've taken stuff that, was like clearly shot on like an iPhone in someone's bedroom in portrait mode and like realized how awesome it was.
Yeah.
But I think that it's good if you can explain to us why it's good, why you think that it's the thing. Because just like showing us the trick is one thing, but like if you really believe in the trick, I think that's the important thing to do. The Ultra Lucky coin was self-produced. I was not working for Penguin at the time. I didn't have like a real big formal relationship with Penguin, but I believed in it as a product enough that I wanted to do it. And I shopped it around to a couple different companies. And believe it or not, multiple companies said no before Penguin said yes.
Why?
I have no idea. So I came and it was like, it's here. It's already packaged. I've also got the tutorial. I just really want this on the website. If you could email about it, that'd be great. But I just want it on the website, and then I'll take care of promoting it from there. And it was, I think, a lot of the fact that the production value was really high. I was already a video guy, and so the tutorial looked pretty good. And then I had a little bit of help with it, but the product looked really good. Like I spent a long time like making sure that the product was like what I would be pleased with. I found made the packaging look cool. But yeah, that's through the partner program. I mean, that's not anything special. I think that the best thing to do is to put it through the partner program and tell us why you think it's cool. Because if you can help us to understand like, why it's cool, especially like if it's something you sold at your lectures. Because like Ultra Lucky Coin had been sold at my lectures before too. So like I knew sort of like what people were excited about and when they'd already purchased it. So that helped inform me. So if it's already got like a little bit of a sales history too, I'm sure that you could be like, hey, look, I've sold this at lectures. It sells out all the time. This is why people say it sells out. If you have quotes attached to it of magicians who people respect who say like, hey, this is amazing. Like you should check this out. Like that helps. I mean, that's, if you can, I think those are the big things, but it all goes through the partner program. I think that's that's the funnel that works for us.
That's cool. That's fantastic advice.
I think the only thing better than that is if you come to when Penguin Max events come back, if you walk up to us and are like, let me show you this, and you show it to us and you just fool the daylights out of us and then share it with us. Like showing it to us in person is always the best, but obviously we can't do that right now. But whenever you see us at conventions, we're always on the lookout for new stuff and new talent. So,
well, can you tease us with anything that's coming up? I mean, don't perform it or even mention it, but anything that you can say in the next 2 or 3 months that people should get excited about?
So I just filmed a lecture with Nathan Caldwell. Nathan Caldwell has a lecture coming out that's going to be very good. He's a guy out of Chicago who works with Magic Inc. He's very deep into Marlowe. He likes to dig around through their archives with all the different Marlowe pamphlets they have and find cool stuff. He's also a bit of a scholar. It's probably one of the best source Penguin lectures that's ever come out. There's a moment in it where he is like walking you through all of the moves as he does them and citing the sources at the same time. And it's just a symphony of sources. It's so good. But the material is like wide-ranging skill level. There's some stuff that is just crazy knuckle busters, and there's other stuff. The first trick in it is something really cool that I think I'm gonna start doing. It involves a calculator, but the method is just so clever. So that's a very good lecture that I really like. And we just released a whole bunch of good stuff at Christmas that I was very excited about.
You've just brought a load of stuff out, which is so good.
Yeah. I think we're going to work on some projects that I'm behind that are like my pet stuff that's going to be coming out.
Oh, brilliant.
That may be longer than 2 or 3 months because one of them is is a longer skill project. I think we're going to be doing that. There's some very cool Joe Rindfleisch rubber band stuff that's coming out. We had Joe in, I want to say mid to late last year, and we filmed 9 projects with him. And when you film a Joe Rindfleisch project, you don't film a trick. You film a concept and then like 20 tricks. It's so they're all big stuff.
I interviewed Joe just a couple of weeks ago, and I'm editing it at the moment, and he demonstrated his ambitious band. He was talking about taking coin moves and applying it, and he did this, and I was just literally looking at it, and I'm like, Joe, how is that even possible? Like, how do you even think about something like the guy? I don't know how his brain works.
Either do I. And actually, if you bought Convergence, which is the trick that just came out, the torn and restored rubber band, that's so cool. I think tomorrow, go back and check your account. There's an updated video. We realized afterwards that we had filmed something like very, very out of order with some like tips and tricks on like how to make it work better. And I found that footage this morning and re-edited it and added it in. So that's getting put in free of charge for everyone. So you'll be able to like, there's updated material on Convergence coming out very, very soon. There is some very cool stuff by some YouTuber, weird bald guy, coming out soon. I think it's
Sounds exciting.
Yeah. Some flipper coin, I think. No, I'm excited about. I don't know. So to be honest, I think Nick and I experienced the same thing now, where we film so much stuff and are involved in so many things that we have no memory of what's
Nick was
coming
saying
up or what's coming up.
Sometimes he'll film a project and it'll take 2 or 3 years to come out. Yep. And people will be buzzing about it, and he'll be like, "Oh yeah, I do remember doing that." Yeah, I do remember.
It's happened multiple times to me and Nick. Someone asked me what it was like to shoot with Woody Aragon, and I was like, I don't know. I'd love to meet him sometime. And then they also reminded me that it was the 3rd Penguin lecture I shot. Wow. We shot it like right after hanging out at 4F together. So there's some very cool lectures coming out. I've just worked on something with John Armstrong. I'm working on something else with John Armstrong right now that's very exciting. There is some really neat lecture. I've been working so deep on the lectures lately that that's primarily where I know what's going on. The Inside the Box series that we've been producing is really cool. They're ads, but it's like Nick and I like open up a box and play with a trick and like look at the products. There's a lot more of those that are coming out. They're really neat. I think like we're going in to shoot one for Spectrum this Friday. So if you like, that's the R. Paul Wilson like color changing deck trick. It's a full routine. It's really cool. So we're going to be doing some really neat stuff with that. And then there are some great books that are going to be coming out this year that are getting reprinted. So if you sort of go back and watch the award show, a lot of the books that are coming out are being teased. And I think that's all that I'm like aware of that it's coming out.
I'm very excited.
Yeah. Very excited. I mean, we're always working on a bunch of weird stuff.
So. And that, like I say, that's why I love Penguin, because you never rest on your laurels. You know, you're always pushing forward, both from a behind the scenes and also a product point of view. And it's great to see. It really is. Fantastic.
Well, I mean, we have a very good customer base. We really like our customers a lot. And we are able to listen to them and talk to them about some neat stuff, especially now with the live stream where we have this like very direct conversation with them. That's so great. And our customer service team is really good and able to have very good, very direct conversations with them as well. I think the big changes that are coming, we're looking at like Clubhouse and some other things like that, where we can have more of like group discussions with people, which is really exciting. And there's something that I'll tell you about off podcast that is very exciting that I don't want to let it slip until it's too early, but there is some very exciting changes coming.
This is awesome. Awesome. I know whatever you guys do, you're going to hit it out of the park. Erik, I've got one last question for you.
Yes.
Which is, before we wrap this whole thing up, the final question. For you personally, what's next? What is on your magical bucket list? Because you've achieved so much, so much. You're working with one of the biggest magic companies in the world. You've been invited to, potentially compete at FISM. You've released products, which is a holy grail for a lot of magicians. You've won big, massive competitions. You've performed doing what you love your entire career. What's next? Is there something you haven't achieved yet that you want to achieve? Is there something you haven't done, or what are you planning in the next? Let's assume that the apocalypse doesn't happen and we're going to get back to normal. And what we got planned?
So I'm about to do something that I have wanted to do for a long time. That when it happens, the magic community will be aware, and I can't say too much about that. I know what I would like to do is I would very much like to publish a book. I've been sort of working off and on a book for a long time. I love books. I wish I could turn my camera to show you this library over here, but like I've got, the Casino Game Protections, Gambling Sleight of Hand, Mint Volume 1 and 2, the Brewster Von Castle notebooks, Card College, Light, the Ascanio books, bunch of Tamariz stuff. I've got a big, thorough library full of like rare books, hard to find books, important books, and I love reading, and I've always wanted to publish my own book. I'd like to spend some more time on the one that I'm writing to get it into a shape where I could share it, whether it's through Penguin or self-publishing. There's I had a show called Please Shuffle the Cards that I was very fond of. And I still perform it. And if you see me perform at the Magic Castle or Chicago Magic Lounge or any of the Max events, that act is a short version of Please Shuffle. And I've written a book about that show that I'm working on finishing up and cleaning up. And I'd like it to come out. Also, I'd like to get back to lecturing at conventions again. I have so much fun at magic conventions, staying up late, sessioning with people. One of the real highlights for me in my career is working on the downloads with Penguin and getting to work very closely with other artists, because I like teaching magic as much as I like performing magic. I like teaching magic, and I like sharing my thoughts and the way I construct things and the way I share them. And I've done a couple of virtual lectures during this pandemic, and I'd forgotten a little bit about how much I like doing that. I recently lectured for Ring 1, IBM Ring 1, and primarily they wanted to hear about the podcast and the live stream, but I said, I'll teach some tricks too, because I really want to do that. So I taught them 3 tricks, and I forgot how much fun it was to do that. There is a convention coming up, a virtual convention coming up. I can't tell you which one. I'm not sure if it's been announced yet, but I have been booked to lecture and perform on a virtual convention that I'm very excited to do. But when live conventions come back, I'm so excited. The Max events that we did were a lot of fun. We were starting to get a lot of people to come to them. And myself, Nick, Dan Harlan, we all taught like workshops. And the workshop that I had planned for this year, I was so excited about, because the material that I wanted to talk about had just started to sort of be talked about more openly in the card magic community. And so I sort of said, screw it. I'm going to go ahead and share it with as many people as possible, because I think it's time for people to play with this. And so I can't wait to get back to the Max events and to be able to like share this work with people that is very rewarding and has served me well. And I think that it's now open enough that we can really tell a lot of people about it. And I can't wait to see what people do with this material after I share it.
That is a fantastic tease. I can't wait to see. I can't wait to see that. And when you know the virtual convention, because I'd love to see you lecture live, Erik. When you know, I know you can't say anything about it right now, but when you can, where will this be shared on?
I'm going to shout it from the rooftops. When the pandemic is over, what I really want to do, what's really next for me, I want to lecture internationally. My partner and I love traveling internationally. A few years ago, we went through Portugal and Spain and hung out with a lot of magicians and had just the best time. But I desperately want to get to England. I really want to go to Blackpool. I will travel
to the Blackpool convention.
I would love to. I want to go to the Blackpool convention. I've never been.
You need to lecture at the Blackpool Convention, man.
I'd love to lecture at the Blackpool Convention. But yeah, if there's anyone watching this who runs a convention or even like puts together international lecture tours, as soon as I get 2 cc's of coronavirus vaccine in me, I will go anywhere, and I will lecture anywhere. And I just want to go hang out with people in different places and eat different weird foods.
Perfect. Well, you know what? I happen to know the people that run the Blackpool Magic Convention, so I will definitely.
Oh, you're a gentleman.
Talk to them about you. Definitely 100%.
Yeah.
Erik, what an amazing way to end the interview. It has been an absolute pleasure speaking to you. Like I said at the beginning of the podcast, I have so much respect for what you've done. I am a massive fan, and I just think you're amazing. So thank you so much for coming on the interview.
Thank you. Well, I really appreciate you asking me. I was very pleased when you asked me. It was thoroughly enjoyable.
Well, you know what? Where can people find out about you? Obviously, I'll put the link in, but if people want to connect on your socials personally, is there a good way to connect?
Yeah.
Is it Instagram? Is it YouTube? Where's the best place to
the best place to connect with me is on Instagram, just at Erik Tait, at ERIKTAIT. We'll have a graphic here. The other place is I stream on Twitch on a regular basis. It's my Twitch channel is Suspicious Wizard, but one of the ones is one of the eyes is a 1 because some idiot is squatting on the original one. So if you just go to historicalporpoises.com, it redirects to my Twitch account. I'm not quite sure why I chose that, but I did, but we'll put the real link down there. But I stream on Twitch Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays, and a lot of times on Saturdays. And you can just talk to me about whatever, because I totally will. I'm also a bit of a sociopath on Twitch, so I apologize if I'm not as much fun on there. But yeah, Instagram and Twitch are the best ways to find me.
Perfect. Erik, thank you so much. Really appreciate it, mate. I'm sure we'll speak again soon. Everybody else, thank you so much for joining me. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. I'm going to be back tomorrow with another video. I'll see you then. And make sure you check out Erik, check out Penguin Magic, and make sure you check out Erik and Nick on the Cool Box Live on a Sunday night, because it is absolutely amazing.